Welcome back to the channel, and in this video we will be discussing the introduction to solid modeling and design. So this is going to be your first look at how to use AutoCAD, Autodesk Inventor, and Solidworks in a 3D capacity, right? So what we're going to discuss here is going to be the basic overview of these different softwares. We're going to take a look at the user interface of them. So we're going to also take a look at how to extrude and some techniques in that. Now, this video is not going to be necessarily focused on only extrusion in those programs or softwares. We're going to also take a look at some of the other commands of them, but a lot of them will be discussed in the example. So your best knowledge that you're going to get from this overall is going to be from the examples. So I'm going to give you just a broad view overview of it, and I'm just going to kind of demonstrate very briefly in each one of those programs what you're going to see here. Alright, so the first one that we're going to start with is going to be AutoCAD. In AutoCAD, we have toolbars that's going across the top, and that's where all of your tools are going to be. And if you're looking here, this is where our extrude is, right? So that's going to be the command that we need to find. The most important thing that I always try to tell people to do when they're using AutoCAD is read the command line. This is going to tell you everything that you need to know. So I will highlight that as we're going through this demonstration, and even in the examples. I want you to kind of pay attention to what's going on in the command line, because that's AutoCAD's way of talking to you. And then finally, we have the workspace configurator. Now, AutoCAD is primarily a 2D drafting software, right? So when you first open it up, it's most likely going to be in 2D drafting. You're going to have to go down to the workspace, which is going to be this little sprocket at the bottom, and I'll make sure I mention that once we get over to AutoCAD here in a second. And then you're going to select the 3D modeling, and then that's what's going to change your ribbon and the way that AutoCAD behaves into a 3D setting, right? So let's go ahead and switch over to AutoCAD real quick for a quick demonstration of this. After I show you that, now when I show you the user interface, I'm also going to show you how to extrude and do some other things, right? And then we're going to discuss the height and the taper angle, and you're going to see that amongst all of these programs, they are different programs, but you're going to see the softwares kind of work the same. So that's the more important thing here, is that you're going to see that there's going to be a common theme here, is that all of these programs may do things differently, but overall they're going to do the exact same thing. Okay, so now I'll jump over to AutoCAD. Okay, so here in AutoCAD, you see the ribbon at the top is already changed. If I wanted to change that workspace, it's going to be located here at the bottom, and you can see the fly up next to it. And then you would select the 3D modeling, and then the ribbon will change. All right. Now, when you do an extrusion here in this program, you have to have a closed profile, right? There are certain things that you can extrude. You can extrude, for example, a rectangle, squares, regions, things of that nature. Some of the things that you cannot extrude is like something like a three-dimensional face, because you can see that that face is already, you know, it's a 3D shape already. So there's going to be no need to extrude that. Okay, so the other thing about AutoCAD is that you have to be super accurate in what you create. So you cannot just go ahead and right in the beginning and just go ahead and make a shape and then go ahead and change those dimensions later. For example, if I go ahead and I select a rectangle here and I create a rectangle, and I didn't read the command line, but that's how I knew I wasn't in a command. But you can see that when I invoke the rectangle command, here at the bottom it's saying, hey, go ahead and pick a point. I'll pick here. And then it says basically go ahead and pick another point. So that's what I'm reading down here on the command line, right? Now you see that this rectangle is created. There is no way of changing this rectangle unless I come back in and I kind of redraw it or do some manipulations like stretch it or do some of that nature. But AutoCAD has got to be super accurate, so you have to put in the dimensions of that rectangle right here in the beginning, okay? And I cannot come back and change it once I'm making an extrusion without doing, I guess, some other drastic measures to do it. So it's not as simple to edit this on the fly. All right, so next I'll go to the extrude command, and you can see the extrude saying, hey, go ahead and select an object for me, and I'll select this object. Let's go ahead and take a look at this in a different orientation as well. So here at the top here, I have a view cube. This is what's going to control the orientation, and I'm going to go ahead and get out of the extrude command here by hitting the escape button. Let's take a look at this view cube for a second. I'm going to take a look at putting this in an isometric view by selecting that corner here. So you can see that corner is highlighted, and you can see now that AutoCAD is rotated sideways. Another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and change the visual style. So this is what's going to determine how it's going to show up here in my graphics area. One that I tend to like to use is going to be shades of gray. So I'll go ahead and select that. And let's go ahead and turn the grid off, because you see I got a whole bunch of squares here. So I'll just click this button here, and now the grid is gone. All right, now I can see that rectangle clearly. Another thing that you can pay attention to is there is a navigation wheel. So if I select here and that brings open this navigation wheel, it'll follow you around. So if I want to zoom into something, if I left click and hold here, I can zoom into where I want to look at. Another feature that it has up in here, I can pan, right? So I can hold this button down and I'll be able to pan without holding the middle mouse button down. I can orbit. So if I hold this down, you'll see that I'm able now to spin and do things of that nature. So this is kind of one of those neat little tools here, but I'll just close this and you can use that if you want to manipulate it. And you also have some other things over here in this navigation panel, like orbit command is here, the zoom extents, pan, and things of that nature. So all of this is basically this kind of spaced out in different ways. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at back to the isometric view of it. Let's go ahead and rotate this just a hair, go in this direction. So remember that I'm looking at this in a true isometric view, which means that I see the front side, the right side, and the top side. The extrude command is located here. Once I go to extrude, it's saying, hey, go ahead and select the objects, right? You can see that it's following my cursor around, so it's asking me select the objects that I want to extrude. I'll go here and select this object. I'll hit enter. And then I can either go up or down, so it doesn't matter which direction you go up. Now, if I'm aiming this up and I type in a height, that's the direction that it's going to go. If I aim it down and I type in a height, it's going to go downward, right? There is no middle plane or symmetric way of doing this using this program, right? As far as I know. Now, there may be another option, and if you do find one, please let me know. But, and I'm kind of, I'm tempted to play around with some of this other stuff down here, but you can also extrude this. And the direction is kind of what we're doing right now. You do have a path and a tapered a tapered angle, and then you have an expression, right? So if I just extrude this going up, it's just going to go up in one direction. If I want to make this go to an angle, by going to the tapered angle, I'll select it here. And now if I give that an angle, you can see that, and this number is probably a little bit big here, but if I give it a tapered angle, and you're going to see that it tends to float out. Let's kind of zoom out a little bit, and hopefully you can see this a lot more. So you can see that it's increasing that angle. You can also see that negative angles go outward, positive angles go inward, right? So if I want this to go inward, and let's just go ahead and give it an angle of 5 degrees. And now you're going to see that when I'm creating my part here, as I'm going up and down, it's going to have a tapered angle on the inside, right? Let's go ahead and click here. And then what I want you to do is take a look at this on the right side, front side, and you can see all of those tapered angles, right? Especially if we look at it from the top view here, you can see it going all the way around. All right, one other thing I want to show you here is while I have this open, and let's kind of get back to an isometric view here, is that I want to also show you that you can do other commands, like you can shell this and you can fillet this. Fillet and chamfer you will see in some of your examples if you do watch it in this video in AutoCAD 3D. But I'm just going to show you one of these commands that we may not get to, but it's called the shell command. It's usually listed underneath this drop down where it says separate. You would select shell. It's asking me to select the 3D object. So this is the object that I want. Now it's saying remove face. The face that I pick on is going to be the face that's going to be removed. Basically, that's going to be the one that's going to be hollowed out. And then when I hit the enter button, I want you to take a look at what it's going to do next. So now it's asking me what's the thickness that I want around it. I'm just going to call it 1, and hopefully that's big enough, and it'll give me an error if it's not. Then I'll go ahead and hit enter. So you can see now it created a shell there. Let's go ahead and exit, and one more exit here. And so now you see that I do have a shell here. Let's go ahead and use the orbit command just to kind of look around this. And you can see that now it's hollowed out on the inside. So I'm able to take a look around this and see it. So that's one of the commands, and you're going to see that in all of these programs. It's going to work the same, right? We're going to be able to extrude something. We'll be able to put a tapered angle on it, and we'll also be able to shell it, right? So let's go ahead and jump back to the PowerPoint now. Okay, so the next program we're going to be taking a look at is going to be Inventor, right? So with Inventor, we're going to have a ribbon that goes across at the top. we're going to have a browser a browser pane. That's what's going to hold our actions or whatever that we do, and I'll show you how to manipulate that. We also have a navigational wheel, and we do have a view cube in this one. Now, the reason why we have both of these that are just like in AutoCAD is because Inventor and AutoCAD is made by the same company. So there's going to be a lot of similarities between these two programs. That's also a reason why that when you go to download, or if you're looking for a student version of either one of these programs, you can get the student version of Autodesk or AutoCAD from Autodesk, and you can also get the Inventor one as well. So if you do take an AutoCAD class and they do download the student version of it, of AutoCAD, you might as well get the student version of Inventor. But they're going to work super similar. Even some of the icons look exactly the same, right? But we do have a view cube. Now, what this browser pane is going to allow you to do is that you can go back and manipulate now some of your sketches. So you can see the limitations that we had in AutoCAD, that once I made that size what it was, there is no changing it, right? I would have to go back and do some kind of manipulation to get that back, or sometimes it's a lot easier just to redraw it. Another thing that we're about to take a look at here in Inventor is going to be the extrude command, right? So we're going to extrude something. We're going to set a height and a depth, and once again, this is going to work exactly like how it did in AutoCAD, and we'll also be able to give it a tapered angle, right? So the same functions is going to apply throughout any solid modeling program, right? You're going to create a sketch. That sketch has got to have some kind of limitations to it, right? So once that sketch is fully defined, or if it's fully enclosed, and that's going to be another huge word for you there, is that it has to be a closed profile, and then we can make a solid. Now, there is one exception there. Solidworks does have a tool where you can do some other things, but just in general speaking, we do have to typically have a closed sketch, and then we're going to extrude it, and then we're going to set the height and the depth. So that's exactly what you see me do in AutoCAD here. So let's go ahead and jump over to Inventor and take a look at that interface as well as the extrude command. All right, so another thing that is unlike AutoCAD, here in Inventor, you have to define what unit of measurements that you're going to be using. So I'll go here to the new icon, and then it's going to bring open this tab here. And this is where we're going to take a look at the standard millimeter. So I have to define it. If I was using inches, I would come here to the English units, and then I would choose a standard inches IPT. But we're using metric for this example, so I'm just going to stay with the metric. I'll go ahead and click on the standard millimeter IPT, and then I'll go ahead and hit the create button. Okay, we'll give it a couple of seconds for it to load up. All right. Now, inside of here, if I try to go to extrude right off the bat, it's going to say, hey, you don't have nothing to extrude. You need to go ahead and create a sketch, right? So if I select here, that's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to say, hey, you need to pick a plane and then create that sketch on, right? Let's go ahead and hit the escape button here and get out of this command. And it looks like I may have locked it up for half a second. Okay, there it is. All right. So I'll escape out of that command, right? Because I'm going to show you a couple of more things before we actually get right into it. Up here at the top, you can see that this is really similar, almost exact, just like what we've seen in AutoCAD, right? So we already discovered and know what the function of those are. We also looked at the navigation wheel, and they're going to work exactly the same. So if I select this, it looks exactly like the one we have in AutoCAD. I'll go ahead and escape out of that. And so the view cube is fine. When we get to doing some of this modeling here in a second, you're going to see certain things happen over here in the browser plane. Okay? So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and hit the extrude button. And once again, it's going to bring me open those planes and say I have to specify a plane to create it on. In AutoCAD, we didn't have to do that, right? We can just start drawing, but we also did. It was actually created on the top plane. And if I jump back over to AutoCAD really quick here, you will see that just right out of the gate here, when I first created that shape, I created that on the top plane here. And so my initial rectangle was on the top plane. Now I could have specified a different plane, but it's not so simple here in AutoCAD. We would have to manipulate the UCS to get it on that plane. And these other ones, it says, hey, I'll go ahead and take that plane. And you're going to see this also works here in Solidworks. But both of them will automatically say, hey, you need to specify a plane here in the beginning. So I can either choose this sketch option here, or I can choose this one. You can also see next to the tooltips, if it has a letter and it's in parentheses, that's going to be a keyboard shortcut for it, right? So if I wanted to just quickly make a sketch in here, I can do a right click and I can choose new sketch. I can hit the S button on my keyboard. That'll bring me to here. Or if I hit E on my keyboard, since I don't have any extrusions on here, the first thing it's asking me for is a sketch. All right. Here at the bottom here, you do have a command line, right? So this is kind of similar to AutoCAD. It's not as intrusive as AutoCAD, but it does have that similar function. So it's telling me right now, select a plane. Let's go ahead and select the XY plane for this example. You're going to see that your ribbon should automatically change over to sketches. I'll just go ahead and choose a rectangular 2-point center rectangle here. I'll specify the center, which is located here, and then I'll go ahead and put in my rectangle. So at this point, I can go ahead and type in numbers, or I can just do a left click and it's going to take that rectangle for what it is. Let's escape out of here. And then I'll show you here, once we extrude this, we'll be able to come back and manipulate this. Ideally, when you're doing 3D modeling, I tend to like to have my sketches fully constrained, meaning that if I go ahead and I place my dimensions on here, and I'm just going to leave the dimensions at what they are, I'm able to come back and manipulate these if I need to, right? So let's go ahead and hit the finish sketch on this. And since I hit the extrude command, it automatically jumped me over to that. So I can hit the extrude. It says, hey, I found a solid for you. Everything is fine. Now, you remember that in AutoCAD, we took a look at the draft taper. I can do the exact same thing here, right? So I can say, hey, give me a taper of 5 degrees. And you can see that this thing will either balloon out. And now I can flip this one just by using this button here. So it'll either flip in or out. I can also send this one both directions. So if I flip it that direction, I want you to take a look and see that it does divide that. I'm just going to kind of rotate this down a hair. And you can see that it does divide that, right? So we're sending that draft going 5 degrees that way and 5 degrees that way, right? So we give it a distance. We can change which direction it go. We can even make it asymmetrical, right? So if I want one side to be longer than the other, I can do that as well. So I have a side A and I have a side B. So I can kind of pull this one a little bit just to kind of over exaggerate this a little bit. And then I'll hit the OK button. And you're going to see that if I take a look at this on the top view, I do have a part going here, going down 5 degrees. And I don't know if I put that taper on the top half. And it looks like it's actually straight, but I can come back and I can manipulate this. I'm just going to double click on this. And you can see that that's one of the huge benefits. And you can see now that in this window, I did not put a taper on the second one, right? So that's kind of one of those things I can go back and I can manipulate it if I make a mistake. So if I make that 5 and send it inward, there we go. I can manipulate that if I have an asymmetrical, but typically if you do a symmetrical, it'll take that same tapered angle and do it on both sides. All right, let's go ahead and hit the OK button. And that's just one way of editing here in this software. Is I can also, if double clicking kind of drives you crazy, you can also do one click on it and then do a right click and then choose the edit feature option. And remember, the feature is going to be the ones out here. If I want to go back and change that sketch, I can also do a right click on here, edit sketch, or that sketch is going to be listed underneath this plus here, and then I can click here. Now, double clicking on each one of these icons will take you back into the editing of that. So if I double click on the icon of the sketch here, it's going to take me back to that sketch. Now I can say, hey, I wanted this to be 40, and I wanted the height to be 20. And once I hit the finish sketch button, it's going to automatically update and take those two changes for me, right? Okay. Another command that you're going to see, and it's kind of really similar, and it's going to work almost exactly the same as it did in AutoCAD, is going to be the shell command. So I'll go ahead and select shell. It automatically finds my 3D. It's asking me to remove the face. So I'll go ahead and remove that face there. And once I hit the OK button, you're going to see that it is hollow on the inside of that. Let's kind of rotate around this and take a look at on the inside of it, right? So kind of made a nice cool little box there. Once again, we will get into some of the holes and fillets and chamfers in the examples, but right now this is just kind of a quick overview of how to use the user face here of Inventor, right? So let's go ahead and switch back to the PowerPoint, and now we will get ready to talk about Solidworks. Okay, so the Solidworks interface, once again, now this one is going to be very similar and more or less like Inventor, right? So if I'm kind of comparing the three, Inventor is kind of like the middle of the road of both of these programs. It's going to have a lot of the AutoCAD similarities, and Solidworks is going to work very similar to it. But the Solidworks ribbon is going to kind of look exactly like this. And now what you're going to see is that Solidworks actually has two ribbons depending on if you have a simplified interface tab turned on. But by far, this is the more or less common one that you're going to see. The extrude that we're going to be dealing with is going to be the extruded boss base. The command manager is what's going to show up on the side. It's kind of going to be like your browser pane when we're talking in Inventor, but we're going to see that once I switch over to Solidworks, right? One of those other things I didn't tell you about is that you can change the units on the fly of each one of these programs except for AutoCAD. So maybe in the future in one of those Inventor videos, I may start off in millimeters. But just because I started off in millimeters don't mean that I can't make it inches. And the same here goes for Solidworks. All right. And the only reason I'm telling you that is that it's a lot simpler to change the units here in Solidworks as opposed to changing them in Inventor. Okay. The command that we're going to be looking at here is going to be the extrude command, right? Once again, we're going to take a look at that one. We're going to create a sketch. We're going to take a look at the extruded boss base. And then we're going to send it in a direction, and then we'll talk about the tapered edge. Okay. Now, this one is also going to have one other neat feature that I'm going to show you. So I might spend a little bit more time here on Solidworks just because it has a feature that I wish Inventor had. And basically, I can create a sketch, and it doesn't have to be really fully closed in order for it to produce a three-dimensional solid, right? So let's go ahead and switch over to Solidworks and take a look at that one. Okay, so here in Solidworks, I'll go ahead and select the new icon here. Then I'll go to Part. And yours may not come up with this one. It may come up with a different ribbon that shows, you know, just parts, assembly, and drawing. But they're all going to be exactly the same here. So I can go ahead and select here and hit the OK button. Then we're going to give it a second here to load up. Now, while it's doing this thing loading up, you see here at the bottom I have a GS. That stands for millimeters, grams, and seconds. So I can click this fly up and then I can change it rather quickly. So this is one of those neat features that I do like about Solidworks over Inventor. Okay, so here at the top, you do see that I do have my ribbon showing. This is my browser pane. Now there will be a little flyout that come out depending on or what command I'm in, which means that that's the command manager, right? So, or I'm sorry, the task manager. So depending on what command that I'm in, it's going to take the place of this browser plane. And then we're going to be able to select what we need to do in that one. And if we do need to access some parts of the model, we will be able to manipulate that and show that. But we have that shown up in some of the examples, right? But for this example, right, we want to just go ahead and create a basic box. But before I do that, kind of navigating around here, we do have our navigation options, and one of them is here. And once I select this, I can either go to the front, top, right side, things of that nature. I can kind of split my screen up if I got different views. I have a normal option, so regardless of what plane, if I want to look at a plane, I can select that face, and then I can tell it to go normal to it, and it will flatten out to it, right? And then I do have some perspectives up here. I can keep it in, you know, the regular perspective or the orthographic perspective and things of that nature. There is a shortcut to bring open this menu here, and it's just going to be the space bar. And if you click the space bar, it'll automatically bring this up for us, right? So it'll automatically manipulate to the orientation. Okay. Now, the one thing I'll tell you, the hang up with me on this program is that if I go ahead and create a sketch, and in this one, if I go ahead and go to extrude, it's going to say, hey, you need to go ahead and create me a sketch or something to extrude. So it works just like Inventor does on that aspect of it. Let's escape out of here. The most common way of doing it is you can select this sketch tab here and then go to sketch. Now, if you don't have the sketch tab or even the features tab, you can do a right click in this area, go to tabs, and then we can highlight them on. I do have this basic one turned on as well, and that's going to be my first one. And that just is one, this is just kind of a quick simplified one, and it has all of the stuff in one. And that brings me to the downside that I don't like about this program, is that when I'm in the sketch program and I can finish the sketch, it does not automatically shift over to the features. You've seen that in Inventor, when I was done with the sketch and I told it that I was done with the sketch, it said, okay. And it automatically got me out of the sketch profile. And then it took me to the features profile, right? It's told me, hey, you need to do something else with this. This program does not do that. Okay. So I'll go to the sketch. I'll select the sketch here. Let's go ahead and put one on the front plane here. And then we're going to do like we did with the other one, right? We're going to create a center rectangle. I'll go ahead and place it right here at this point here. And just leave it at this distance. Okay. You're seeing that it's giving me a shaded contour edge, which means that that's what the solid is going to produce, which is totally fine for what we need. And you can see now this is the task manager, what I was telling you about. And over here, you can see your browser shifts out to here. So this is the part, anything underneath it, it would kind of show me some information or what I have. And you can see here, I do have now the sketches and orientations and things of that nature that will appear. Okay. So here's my task manager. And then on this side, this is now my browser, if that makes any sense. Okay. All right. So I'm done with this. In order to get out of the sketch command, let's go ahead and hit the green check mark. And now you can do it here, or you can do a right click and you're going to get a green check mark. Wait a minute. It should have showed me a green check mark here. Okay. Well, either way it go. I'll just go ahead and hit the green check mark here. Sometimes it shows up in the right click menu. All right. So now I have my basic sketch that it needs. And if I go here and I tell it to exit out of the sketch, I'll sit here and I'll wait, and now it'll stay here in the sketch, right? So it's saying, okay, you're finished with the sketch. Do you want to make another sketch or another sketch? Inventor typically kind of, takes you to the next step or leads you to the next step of what you need to do. Here, I have to either go to the features, and then I can go to the extrude or boss, or I can do it here in the basic tools, right? It's going to be located here. So if I select here, it's going to automatically go find that closed profile. And then it's going to extrude it. It's going to start off by giving me some information to extrude it, right? And I'm hoping here in a second it's going to load up, or did I select the button? Okay. I don't think I actually selected the command. All right. So right now it's looking for a plane. I'll just go ahead and select here. It should be able to pick up all four of these lines and say, hey, that's the sketch that you want to make. If not, it could have been easier just for me to select it there, but it did select it. Okay. So out of the back, this is going one direction, right? I can flip the direction just by selecting there, and now it's going to be going this direction. I do have an option to make it go to mid-plane, or this is my symmetric, so it's going to be called mid-plane. And you can see that it will stretch my part out going both directions. And I do have a asymmetric way of doing this, but it's underneath the bind, right? So I'm going to go blind one direction, and then if I turn the other direction on and I go blind, that's going to be the asymmetric. All right, I'm just going to uncheck that. I can also give it a taper angle, and that's what's going to be located here. So if I select this icon here, and let's go ahead and kind of over-exaggerate it a little bit. Let's make it 5 degrees. I'm just going to rotate this around, and you're going to see that this is tapering inward at that 5 degrees. You can do a little bit more pronounced if you want. Let's make it 10 degrees. And you can see now that that is sloping in, right? 10 degrees. Let's go ahead and hit the OK button here. Rotate it around a little bit. And now you can see that I'm also able to do a shell command, right? This is going to work exactly the same, right? So I'm going to go to shell. It's going to go ahead and specify the solid. I'm just going to go ahead and pick this face, because that's what I want to shell. We're going to give it a thickness. Let's go ahead and make it like 1. Hit OK. And once I hit the OK button, it should shell that to the inside. And then that's exactly what it done. All right, one of those other features that I wish that it did would be, if I go back to a sketch, and let's see, I want to put a sketch on, let's go to this bottom plane here. Okay, so once we're putting this sketch on here, the first feature that I wish Inventor had, or even AutoCAD, is that it has a midpoint line here. And what this does is what this means is that I can select the line right here at that center point, and then as I'm drawing this line, you're going to see that that takes it as the center of that, and it's automatically put that constraint in it. So it's a good midpoint line that is already done. Let's go ahead and place a dimension on it. And I don't know what dimension I want to make this line here. Let's call it 50, just to make it easy. Okay. Now, with this being that distance and everything, this is all that I need to create a three-dimensional model here using Solidworks. So if I finish this sketch, I'll take a look at this going sideways, right? So we're going to hit the space bar. And we're just going to take a look at the isometric of this one. All right. And now when I go and I take a look at the extrude, so I'll switch over to the features tab and I'll use this extrude. I'm looking for it to find this line here. And I will apologize, my SolidWorks just seem to be running slow today. But you can see that it created a three-dimensional solid out of that. And the reason it's able to do that is because you can take a look at this and now it's created a thin feature, right? So I can tell it how far I want this to go. And you can see that it's creating that. And then I can give it the thickness here. So if I wanted to change the thickness of this and say, hey, make that 20, you're going to see that this gets wider. I can send it in different directions, right? So I can send it going one direction that way. I can go in mid-plane, or I can also go asymmetrical, right? So I can go in two directions and it's going to give me the option to specify which of those two directions. So really neat feature that you can use here using this program where you can create one line and basically make the thickness of what I need. So I created a whole box just off of one line. Let's go ahead and hit the check mark here. All right, another neat feature that you do have in this program is you can hit the S button, right? So long as I'm just here and I'm not in any command and I hit S, this is going to bring up some of the common commands that you might want to do next. So for example, if I want to put a cut in here or something of that nature, I can select it from here. If I maybe want to fillet these edges or even do something of this nature, again, I have these options over here in the quick selection, right? So if I want to go to fillet, and then I'll wait for it to pop up over here and give me a radius and things of that nature, and then I can just go ahead and place them on here. So I can go ahead and pop a radius on these two, and it might be too big, but let's go ahead and make that number somewhere around 3. All right, and that should be enough. All right, so then it can pop those radius on, but that's just using the S button, right? So anyway, that's probably about enough as we need to see about SolidWorks. But like I say, these examples are going to give you a lot more useful information on these programs. All right, so let's go ahead and switch back to PowerPoint and close up this lecture. Okay, so in summary, we took a look at all 3 programs. We took a look at their interfaces. We looked at all of the extrusion techniques, and you can verify that all of them are very similar. We also did a draft on each of them just to show you that we can give an angle on each one of these. Now, to get good at this, you're going to have to practice. Now, these examples that are going to be part of this class is going to be your first introduction to, practicing any one of these programs. I would advise you to try, if you can, get all 3 of them, and you can compare them, and it will make your knowledge on all of them. You're going to see that the techniques for them all are going to work the same, right? Same but different. As long as you understand kind of what's going on, that you're going to need a basic sketch, then you're going to be able to do something to that sketch. Extrusions. Extrusions only work on typically one sketch, right? So that's going to be the important thing. One sketch. That's all we're going to need to make an extrusion. All right? You're going to see in the next coming classes when we talk about revolves, lofts, and sweeps, they're going to need different things, right? So, but anytime you're doing an extrusion, just remember one sketch. All right? So hopefully this has been helpful. I know this has kind of been a little longer video, but you can kind of go back through it, and I'll try to remember to chapter this so you can kind of take a look at which one you want to take a look at. So if you only want to look at AutoCAD, go ahead and take a look at that. All right, but I do appreciate your time. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next lecture.